Hello. My name is Chelsea Anderson. I'm a public program specialist here at the Getty. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome you this evening to Photobooks by Women, a panel discussion celebrating the exhibition, What They Saw, Historical Photo Books by Women, now on view in the GRI galleries. Please join us for a reception following the program to view the exhibition and to toast both staff and many of the artists included in the show, which we are so pleased could be here with us tonight. Now, please join me in welcoming Kathy Opie, Melodie McDaniel, Russet Lederman, and Isotta Poggi to the stage.
Thank you, everybody. Welcome here at the Getty tonight for this very special event where we are celebrating many books, and one book at a time, one person at a time. It is such an honor to be here today introducing and launching and celebrating the exhibition What I Saw, Historical Photo Books by Women at the Getty Center. Our panel celebrates the work of women photographers, publishers, collectors of photo books. I would like to start by thanking everyone who was involved in the show, and start with Glenn Phillips, Chief Curator, Head of Exhibitions at the GRI, Kathleen Solomon, the Director of the Library at the GRI, Jennifer Park, Sally McKay, Chelsea Anderson for tonight's event, thank you. And thank you, Richard Sun, for sponsoring the event, and a round of applause for all here, including the entire library that was involved at every level and step of this reading project. I don't know if there is library staff here. Today, we celebrate this opening thanks to the amazing work behind the book, What They Saw. This book here, this catalog that was published by Russet Lederman and Olga Yaskevich. So there we go. Here is our beautiful selection of books. And this show could have not happened without the two editors of this catalog that you see here all opened up, What They Saw, Historical Photo Books by Women, the co-founder of 10 by 10 Photobooks, which is a publishing house in New York City, founded by Russet Lederman and Olga Yaskevich. And a few notes of introduction for Russet. Russet is a writer, editor, and photobooks collector who lives in New York City. She's a co-founder of 10 by 10 Photobooks and lectures internationally. Her editorial work has received awards from Paris Photo, Aperture, Krasna Kraus Foundation, IGA, Le Rencontre Arles, and the Smithsonian American Art Museum. Her recent publications are What They Saw, Historical Photo Books by Women, 1843-1999, and Flashpoint, Protest Photography in Print. So happy you are here with us.
Thank you, Isotta. Before I begin, I'd just like my colleague, Olga Yaskevich, to stand up, who's standing over there. And so Olga and I run 10 by 10 photo books, and we champion photo books, not the print on the wall, but the photo books, and we also champion the ability to touch, to explore, to hold photo books, and we're so happy to be here at the Getty. It's the 5th venue for the Reading Room Tour, and I just also wanted to say thank you to Marjorie Ornstein, Isotta Poggi, Jennifer Park, Moira Day, and to Richard Sun, who is championing this project through its numerous iterations, as well as Chelsea Anderson for arranging this evening. So, thank you. So, part of what we do is we fill in overlooked and marginalized sectors of photography book history. And towards that goal, we've done 2 books so far. How We See, which is a contemporary anthology of photo books by women, and What They Saw. Very confusing, 2 names that sound very similar. What They Saw is a historical book, so that will help you out. But before I begin, I just want to kind of show some stats. Before we started this project in 2018, Olga and I sat down and we went through the existing reference guides on photo books that were out there. And photo book history is relatively short. It's the first anthology documenting photo books was 1999. So we went through, there were several at that point, and we came up with these really sad statistics about women's representation within these publications. It was only 10.5%, so we said, let's look at bookseller inventory, and it was 16.2%. And then we thought, well, the entry point for young photographers are the various first book and a dummy, like a maquette of a book award. And that was a little bit more promising, 39.5, but then when the winners were announced, it was only 28.5%. So we kind of knew we had to do something. It was a little sad. So we did How We See, and we had a structure where we have 10 experts from around the world choose 10 books. That's why we're called 10 by 10. And so here you see the 100 books that came from that project. This reading room that was associated with this project, as well as a publication like the one Isotta just held up, started at the New York Public Library, and it traveled to Paris, Buenos Aires, Pittsburgh, and Boston. So here is a spread from How We See, which is, again, the contemporary book that covers books by women from 2000 to 2017. And you're seeing Catherine Opie's book that was selected by the Selector for North America, a woman named Leslie Martin, who is now the head of the Printed Matter bookstore that runs the LA Art Book Fair that's coming up in a couple of weeks here in Los Angeles. And so she picked the 10 books, which are on the black on the left side, and then each book was given a spread, and she did a short kind of documentation. And this was a reading room that also traveled, as I said. And in it, we had this kind of short historical reference section, and it was just to contextualize a contemporary book with 19th and 20th century photography books by women. And as the reading room was touring, people said to us, well, what about these historical books? You're not really documenting them, you're not showing them, you're just giving us a bunch of them on a few spreads. And so basically, COVID hit, and we said, okay, we've got time now. Let's do the historical book. So Olga and I used that kind of reference section from How We See. We worked backwards to make what they saw. And we put together a team. We have graduate students, PhD students, who help us with the research. We picked all the books. There were 258 books that we ended up with. It's a kind of rewriting of photo book history because it has been written from the perspective of men, for the most part, up until this point. And we kind of doled out the various books to do research on during COVID. And to graduate students, we had one from UC, who's at UC Riverside, Ashley McNellis, and we had another from USC, Rose Bishop, so I just want to give them a shout out. Basically, the book took off. And I'm just going to show you the first spread. We start with the very first photo book in 1843 by Anna Atkins, and Isotta's going to speak on this, so I'm going to jump over it, but it's cyanotypes, and she was, it's a cameraless process, and first book by a man or woman or anyone, photographic book. And then another example is we included this timeline, which Olga came up with, because there were a lot of dead ends, or kind of books that we came across, but we could not conclusively determine if they were done by women, because a lot of women worked with their partners or husbands, and the book was credited to their husband. Or there were significant picture press history or publishing events, and they produced a book, but we just could not conclude it. So this is kind of an invitation, these kind of columns, for future researchers to look and move forward from the work that we started. I'm going to show you two books because I got a really short time. I'm going to wrap it up soon. And this is, I like this book a lot because this is by a woman named Eslanda Good Robeson. It's called African Journey. It's from 1945. And she was an anthropologist who studied at Columbia University. And she was also married to the actor-activist Paul Robeson. And it's one of the earliest books written by a female scholar of color about Africa, and was done after her 1937 trip to South Africa and Uganda. And then this is another book I like. It's by a South Asian photographer named Dayanita Singh, who is an incredibly prolific photo book maker. This book is on Zakir Hussain, a photo essay. It's from 1986, 1987. And I'm showing you this because it's the very first book she did with this massive kind of career of making photo books. So this is kind of where it all started for her. And I'm going to wrap up with showing you the statistics again, because Olga and I did the statistics in 2024 to kind of see, okay, we've done how we see, we did what they saw, we did the statistics in 2017 to kind of start us rolling, and did things get better, worse, what happened in the interim time? And it got a little bit better. 13.75% of the books in the anthologies documenting photo books are by women, so an increase by 3.25%. 22.4% of bookseller inventory, and I'm talking about the big photography publishing booksellers like Mac, Steidl, and Aperture. So an increased 6.2%. It's still under a quarter, so if you kind of put it in perspective. But the good news was this kind of entry point for younger women photographers, or younger photographers in general, which are these First Book and Dummy Awards. That's where we're seeing this next generation coming out. And it was 48.7% of First Book and Dummy shortlists were by women. And the better news, 62% of the winners were women. So that we're going to see a lot more photo books by women. And so here you can see the reading room at the Reina Sofia Museum in Madrid, which was its last venue that closed in June 2024. And you can see it at the Getty. And it's different in each venue. Each institution we partner with puts their stamp on it. And Isotta has put this wonderful stamp of the Southern California women photographers. And so that's where I'm going to leave it, because I'm so happy that we are here and that it has taken on this kind of next phase in its life.
Thank you, Russet. Thank you for this wonderful introduction to all the work you have done on which we are standing, thanks to you. And I want to give a little bit of an overview of what the GRI version of the show is, with this slide where you see the reading room that is now in the GRI gallery, and viewed from the two opposite directions. So on the left, you see the beginning, the historical chronological order of the books that people are allowed to touch and peruse. And then on the right slide, you see the ending, starting from the 1990s, which is the book end of the catalog by Russet and Olga. And I'm going to show very few highlights to give you a sense of what is the show about. The very first object is a facsimile of the cyanotypes of the British and foreign ferns. The original album is in the collections of the Department of Photographs at the Getty Museum. It could never be exhibited or seen. And we were very happy to make a facsimile album that is half the size, so 50 plates instead of 100, and then bound together by thanks to the Getty talent that we have in-house of artists who can do bookbinding and printing as real masters. And I want to bring the attention to this because the very earliest object represents the beginning of photography. Photography, when without a lens or the mediation, meant transforming an image, creating an image by making an impression that allows somebody to record the size, the shape, the structure of an object, but you are still not seeing what is inside. This is the infancy of photography. And another very interesting aspect is this artist, Anna Atkins, began to collect all these ferns, has done other projects with algae also. And then there is this process of collecting and printing and studying and also understanding what was the British Empire in Victorian England, which meant you have plants not only from the British, but also from the different colonies of the empire. It's an important aspect to represent the very first beginning of photography. And here you see the album on the Louis Lafon, 1866. This is the earliest object from the GRI collection in the show, juxtaposed with a montage photograph by Stepanova in 1932. Obviously, there is a parallel about shooting, and you can think of shooting with a camera as an expression coming from pictures like this. Why? Because the image on Lafon is a woman who is photographing with salt paper prints before gelatin silver prints existed. And there were the black and white photographs, parents of the gelatin silver prints. And she photographed all the different battalions of the French army of Napoleon III as a job to catalog visually with visual records the different regiments and uniforms of the Imperial Army. Again, the power of photography to the service of the military. And the right one is instead a propaganda image to a call for arms for the Red Army. So again, in 1930, think about from an empire to another empire, photography serving the political situation of the time. However, at the same time, in 1930, you see this fantastic work in the GRI collection, Avono Avenue, which means confessions not made, literally. It's a beautiful artist book of collage art. So you just saw Stepanova showing the Red Army. At the same time, there was an artist like Claude Cahun in France exploring various issues. She was a surrealist artist, and she used collage art to self-represent in the impossible way that you could visualize by creating multiple identities, wearing masks, living in an ocean of the free flow of consciousness, trying to live with other people. There are, besides her exploration of gender and identity, she also lived in Nazi-occupied France. So she also had to find ways to hide, and she eventually survived only because the Americans came to France and brought an end to World War II. The book that you see on the right, Liberating, from 2023, is a graphic novel, an autobiography of Claude Cahun. Is a beautiful graphic story where you see that the graphics from the collage art in the original book is being used in the book. So I encourage, it's like, imagine that as the contemporary version of what Claude Cahun was trying to do in 1930. And another highlight from Special Collection, the last one I'm going to show is An American Exodus, a record of human erosion. I'm sure everybody knows Dorothea Lange and the Migrant Mother. This is the book that was made in the same situation. Farm Security Administration funded photographers to go out and about and document what was happening in the United States because of environmental crisis, drought, and of course the crash of the market. And when you see the last West on the top right, that is the final destination for 200,000 migrants that moved mostly on foot or on cart, like you see on the cover, walking to find work and reaching California. We are in 1939. That's a year that Hitler is invading Poland. And America was creating this mass migration towards the California that we know today. I want to show the slide where you see the contrast of the migrants on foot, and then on top of the advertisement, if you had the money, you could go by train to California. So here is the beginning of the reading room. We are here at seeing the books that you can touch. I'm going to show only a few highlights. This one is a book from 1979 from by a German artist, Marianne Wex. Let's Take Back Our Space. You can read it, female and male body language as a result of patriarchal structure. So she conceptually took a camera, imagining already TV is pervasive, people are seen on screens and in public spaces. And she started to register how postures in public space say something about hierarchical structures of a certain kind, specifically patriarchal. And in the last row, in the second part of the book, men's struggle against woman power and effects upon body language throughout the course of history, she is looking at how body language is depicted in antiquity through sculptures. And you see how women, goddesses, are sitting in antiquity 2,500 years ago compared to now. So it's a very visual way of representing where are we coming from, where are we going, where are we now. This book is very important, super interesting for media studies. And then fast forward to the last decade of the presentation, the last decade of this book, what they saw is called Reaching for a Global Photo Democracy. Is a wonderful way of representing how the access to cameras and access to printing technologies allows for more opportunities to self-represent. And of course, you recognize Barbara Kruger, Thinking of You, Colored People by Adrian Piper, Shirin Neshat, and then Heroics representing other type of figures and women in society. And with that, from this global photo democracy around the world, it was natural to land in Southern California because it is an epitome of global and international megalopolis full of different, we've seen migrants coming from all over in the 40s, and not to mention from Asia, from Latin America, Central America. So it's an extremely diverse society. And we were fortunate to be able to choose some examples of photo books by women artists in Southern California who represent different approaches to photography, to social documentary, to self-representation, to conceptual practices of all kinds. And we are very honored, of course, to have here some of these two artists, Catherine Opie and Melodie McDaniel. And I'm going to give you the cursor, Kathy. And let me give a small presentation about you, but I have to turn many pages here because I didn't get this part. So a short introduction for Kathy. For over 30 years, Catherine Opie has captured often overlooked aspects of contemporary American life and culture, one of the most important photographers of her generation. Opie's subjects have included her seminal portraits of the LGBTQ plus community, the architecture of Los Angeles freeway system, mansions in Beverly Hills, Midwestern ice houses, high school football players, California surfers, abstract landscapes of national parks, and Bel Air residences like the one of Elizabeth Taylor that is in our reading room, and you see on the left side of the slide. In 2018, Opie debuted her first film, The Modernist, a dystopic view of Los Angeles, a city that has figured prominently in her work over the years. Her complex and diverse body of work is political, personal, and highly aesthetic. The former conceptual and documentary are always at play. Welcome, Catherine.
Thank you. It's great to be here with all of you because I think that it's unusual to be able to talk about specifically photo books, which are so important to my life and my collection and the way that I learned photography. And one of the things about photo books is it's a different kind of accessibility. They have gotten more expensive, but you can always go to a library. You know, there's all these different kinds of ways to think about photo books. I've had a really hard time making photo books, and that's always really surprised me that I haven't really had a regular publisher. I've had an amazing LA partner, Lorraine Wild, who I met while I was a grad student at Cal Arts, who has designed most of my books, including the 700 Nemes book of Elizabeth Taylor's home. But I'm going to give you a little bit of a background of when I started photography, because I think it's always kind of interesting to know. I was born in 1961, and when in 1970 I asked my parents for a camera because I had written a book report on Lewis Hine, and I specifically wrote about the images of the child laborers in the South Carolina mills. And I told my parents that I wanted to be a social documentary photographer, but I don't think I actually said social documentary photographer. I think that I probably said, I want to be a photographer. Can I have a camera for my birthday? And so I got a camera for my birthday, but it's really an interesting time period versus now to think about a child learning about the world through images. Because you had National Geographic, you had Life, you had Look, you had this kind of relationship to photography as storytelling. And that's one of the things that I've always loved about photo books, is they actually can contain and hold kind of a story, a sequence, an idea, like The Ballad of Sexual Dependency, one of the most perfect books, you know, and other books. So that's kind of how I started, but 700 Nemes was a very interesting body of work in which that I shared, I had an accountant that I shared with Elizabeth Taylor. Elizabeth might think that I shared her accountant with her, but it was our accountants that introduced us. And I ended up 6 months in her home in Bel Air while I was also faculty at UCLA, and slowly beginning to describe a portrait of her through her home. Because how do you do celebrity portraits? How do we begin to think about a history of portraiture in a certain way and ideas of representation? And it's something that I've always traversed through in terms of ideas of identity within making work. And so Elizabeth Taylor ended up passing away 3 months into the body of work, and everybody in the home got very attached to me, so I ended up 3 months like slowly watching the house be dismantled, but that's not what I wanted the book to be about. So please go to the reading room. It's an amazing what has been put together. It's a great gift from you guys that you put this together. Especially because it is really hard for women photographers to make books. I've picked a few from my library. I taught at UCLA for 27 years, and during those 27 years, my entire library was housed in my office. And last July, I retired, so Kati Barkin, a great LA architect, designed this library for me in my studio. So it's really interesting because all through my whole life, my studio didn't have my books because I wanted my books to be for my students. And so now I start morning coffee with pulling something down off the shelf that I might have forgotten about. And it's just another way to take a journey. So I'm really grateful now to be living with my library again. But a couple of books that I picked out that you guys might not know about is Scum Manifesto is obviously a kind of a relationship to Valerie Solanas, but what Justine Kurland did in 2022 was actually collage and cut up all the male photographers' books. Because, you know, it's kind of a great piece, right? Because it's like, okay, another male photographer gets a book, fantastic. So she's created these collages, which I think collage is a really interesting place to be looking again, especially in terms of ideas of politics and the complex world that we're living in. And, you know, bringing up Claude Cahun and these different moments within collage, I really love that Justine brought this back, and it's a fabulous book to get. Another book that came out, which just made me incredibly excited, was Anne Brigman. Because nobody knows about Anne Brigman. How many out there know who Anne Brigman is, just out of curiosity? Okay, some hands up. You know, we all know about Carlton Watkins. We all know about this, but here's this amazing woman going off into the Sierras with glass plates, with women and nature, and she's kind of she's doing like spiritual journeys, kind of like Helma F. Klimt being rediscovered and things. And it's just like the most brilliant book with also a selection of her poetry, and it's a box set. It's incredibly designed. So happy to have this in my library, and that somebody ended up doing a book about Anne Brigman. The second one is Lorraine Squire, 1939. Now, definitely look at the back cover, because there's another back cover I'm going to show you. There's nothing like this self-portrait of a woman with a camera on a back cover of a book. It just drives me crazy. I don't know what it is, you know. It's just like, yeah, damn, look at her. She's next to an airplane. And the opening chapter is, I shoot ducks, you know, or I shoot photographs. You know, it's all about shooting, and it's all about, but hers, she's not killing the wildlife, and she was hired by Hudson Bay Blanket, of all people, to do this incredible archive. And it's one of those books that you can find, like, you know, on eBay or in other rare bookstores, and you can still find it like for $12. But when I found it in a used bookstore and I thumbed through it and I looked at the plates, and each plate was signed, and the paper and everything about it was just like, oh my God, Lorraine Squire is my new favorite duck photographer. Who knew? The next person is Evelyn Cameron, another photographer who should be known for being probably the most important female photographer rediscovered, fortunately rediscovered. So many negatives are rediscovered, right? We know about Lee Freelander finding E.J. Bellock's like negatives. We know of these different kind of moments, but here is somebody who sought this archive, Donna, and it's all 5x7 negatives that were all like, you know, glass plates again. And she was one of the founding people to come out from Montana, and the essays in this and the images in this book are just otherworldly, and they make you, I'm a woman who likes to travel with a large format camera. So all of American Cities was shot with a 717. I shoot 810. So any woman who's like working large format, I just like have great respect for. But glass plates, it's next level, you guys. And so that is her self-portrait and some of her images in the book. But I mean, it's a great way to end here on this matter, because we want to be able to all get in a conversation together. And we've got somebody over here who really understands horses as well. So here you go, Melodie.
Thank you. A very brief introduction to Melanie, that I'm very happy that you're here today. Melodie McDaniel is a fine art photographer and film director in the fashion and the music industry and scene. Her career has spanned over 2 decades with exhibitions and countless commercials, and including photo campaigns for magazines. As a photographer, she has long prioritized authenticity in her art, specializing in portraiture photography, often exploring the intersections of different subcultures. The Getty Museum has acquired some of her groundbreaking work from the series presented in this book, Riding Through Compton, which was selected for our pop-up reading room as a compliment. So Melodie, why riding into Compton?
Yes. Happy to be here, part of this. I the first image of my photo library, and I love collecting books as well. The Writing Through Compton book was a wonderful gift that was given to me. I love telling cultural stories, and this book was I'll talk about was a club in an amazing club in South LA that a friend of mine told me about. But and when I heard that about that there were horses being, people riding horses, kids riding horses in Compton, I remember going, wow, that was, seems so unexpected. And so the talking about the cover this book that I made, that I was so fortunate to get this project to fall in my lap. It's, so I spent, 4 years on a journey documenting these kids in the community of Compton. And so the cover picture that I have is a portrait that I did of one of the students at the Compton Club. I did some pictures of in and around the area of Compton, and then also in the on the urban streets. So the picture where you see the other Kenny writing on the street, where you see the graffiti in the background. I wanted to balance different parts of Compton and the areas of where they would ride. So this club let me tell you a little bit about the club. So Compton Junior Posse was the name of the club, and this was an organization that Maisha Akbar, who founded the club back in 1998. And she had this brilliant idea to start this nonprofit for a very positive mission, for her to have a safe place for her kids and kids in the community of Compton, because there was a lot of gang violence. And so when she moved over to that area, she was trying to, her motto was was keeping kids on horses and off the streets. So this beautiful club, was amazing. So, and the club offered a lot of really beautiful things for the kids, like caring for horses, and responsibilities through animal care, riding lessons, and show jumping, and academic support and mentorship. But so in this photo, I wanted to also bring up how I found out about this club was a friend of mine, Amelia Fleetwood, told me about the club. So I was so together we went and met with Maisha, and Maisha basically opened the door for us to come in and document this amazing club that she had going for these kids. So what I started to do when I started this process of taking photos, besides taking pictures of the kids in the club riding and practicing their skills, I also love the fact that they also went outside of the club and in the area, the neighborhood around Compton. And one of the picture on the right, Senior Cliffs, was a place that the kids would frequent after the club. They would come over and they would go and get lunch, and Senior Cliff is a pillar in the community there, and he had this like a mix of American soul food and Mexican food, and these kids would love to go and hang out and go get the food. And I love the idea of that kind of modern day Western vibe where you could see the kids walking right up to the window and ordering food. And on the left, I have a picture where I recreated, because I heard a story through them saying that they would also take their horses through a drive-through to get ice cream, French fries, and I just thought that was so cool. Again, seeing like a modern day version of a Western, instead of pulling up in the car, they have their horse. And through this, as I was saying, how my friend Amelia Fleetwood, who is a writer, who turned me on to this club, we thought this book would be really important to actually, besides just taking the pictures of documenting these pictures of these kids, it would be a good idea to actually interview them and get some quotes about how they connected with the horses in the program. And this beautiful portrait that I took of Morgan on Ebony was amazing. How, again, these kids were so connected to the horses, and they just had such free spirit and casualness to how they rode, and confidence. And a lot of this came from just the fact that they learned so much going through this amazing program. And how I got started in photography is when I was a teenager, my mother had really great art books and National Geographics laying around around the house, and I remember just thumbing through them and absorbing them and loving them and seeing how spectacular these images were, and they had such an impact on me that it planted a seed for me to want to, inquire about getting into photography, and extended to the moment when after high school, graduating, my mother sent me on a cultural program in Israel to experience working on a kibbutz, and that experience was just life-changing. And when I was in Israel, I was able to, experiencing the kibbutz. Immediately, I started thinking about, wow, like how I could imagine a National Geographic photographer would, go out and document, amazing and interesting culture. So after that experience of being in Israel, and including, besides traveling through Israel, I went to the Sinai Desert, I went to Egypt, and through that, mind you, at that time, I didn't know much, I wasn't experienced with how to take pictures, but I just knew I had an intuitive feeling with it. So I had a little cheap plastic camera that I had taken with me on that trip and was snapping away and imagining myself as a National Geographic photographer. So I came back, after that amazing experience, I came back to LA, and I knew I wanted to pursue photography, so I researched schools and found our art center, College of Design, and through there I learned, found my voice, learned my craft, and just it was, so, and also at Art Center, I love spending time at the in the library, and through that experience of being in the library all the time, I came across, really great books of inspiration like Diane Arbus, Carrie Mae Wims, Ann Golden, there's many. And my mom also loved the fact that she saw how much I was interested in photography, and she gifted me this amazing book, which I love, Eudora Welty. And what I loved about Eudora Welty, when I was so struck by her images, she was shooting pictures in this, the photo that's right there, these are her photos, and I immediately was drawn to the style of her photography, the black and white, the connection of community, the way these portraits were taken and framed. So it inspired me to want to take pictures in a similar manner. And this picture, oops, excuse me, go back. I was going to say the one here. Oh, sorry, guys. I'm like pointing at, sorry. Yeah, that's Eudora Welty, and over here is my photo. And I ended up, after being inspired, after I finished art school, Art Center, I went to New York and, was exploring, and I ended up wanting to do some, editorial work. I went and met with editors at magazines and just try to get my, expose myself to try to get some editorial work. So through that, I went to Paper Magazine, and also, let me back up here. Being in New York, I went to Harlem. I spent some time in Harlem, and I specifically was there on a Sunday, and there was this amazing energy of churchgoers going on. And again, I remember the image of Eudora Welty's, churchgoer of this little girl. And so I had this idea that I wanted to document or recreate a story of churchgoers. So I pitched that story to Paper Magazine, and the editors at Paper Magazine was Kim Hostrenstreeter and Mickey Boredom, gave me this amazing opportunity to go ahead and document and make a fashion cultural story on churchgoers. So that's where that image came from. And I wanted to point out I also like the way my process is. I like to actually cast, unconventional models, and also work with real people. So in this case, this was a model that we was just starting out, and then this sweet little girl was actually at a church, attending the church service with her family, and so I asked her mother if it would be okay if she participated in my photo shoot. So my pictures, I like to try to capture moments that feel timeless and, you know, as if they were found or actually, if, you know, they were real, you know, even though I staged this, it was actually, I always like to have my work actually feel more, you know, natural, as if it was real. And then another inspiration to me was Diane Arbus. And Diane Arbus is, like, you know, a master, as a lot of you I'm sure know about her. I was, again, drawn to the medium format, the black and white, the intimate portraiture, the subject matter, and how she approaches her, you know, works with her subjects. It's so interesting to me. And feeling like a lot of it was like people that were kind of like less visible. And I also was drawn to that type of, those type of subjects as well. So here, circling back to my Compton Junior Posse project, my book, there was a few amazing kids, you know, students and kids that were at the club, and Edwin, at the top, Edwin, who I documented, and mind you, again, I was going to say, I documented this over a course of 4 years, so I was able to get some moments. Edwin, I just met him, you know, and he's at the club here when he just met him, and I was so drawn by his beauty, his androgynous look. He was amazing. And then throughout the course of, you know, a couple of years go by, I was able to set up, you know, personal photos, additional photos, more like in a more fine art portraiture. And that's where I created that moment. And that was kind of, to me, this picture was like a Eudora Welty Arbus inspiration. And then I also have other, like right here, Zoe, who was another student at the Compton Club, and amazingly, this picture was actually taken on the very first time I met them, and I started actually documenting. And there was a really great Halloween, you know, like a Halloween writing competition, and I loved how they dressed up. And this also felt like a nice homage to Diane Arbus, you know, because of that, you know, the mask and like the mystery and, you know, the square format and just the, you know, and then here, you know, being a collector of books, I love collecting books, and I came across this amazing book on a road trip, and you know, when I would go into different cities, I would go into a used bookstore, and you know, and search around and look at the photo books, and here I came across this amazing book called The Other Hampton, and blown away by this book, and this was by photographer Judy Tompkins, and the pictures were taken in 1970, 1974 and 75. So I had this idea in mind after doing that editorial for Paper Magazine on the churchgoers. I pitched this story to Vogue International to you know, go to East Bridgehampton and kind of recreate what was happening there in the 90s. So these photos were actually, again, I brought models, unconventional models, people that were like literally just starting for the first time, plus, again, mixing real people. And this gentleman here was, I casted him. I was looking for some, you know, I casted him at the post office. You know, I went to the post office and I was looking around to find some models to be a part of my story. I love working with real people as well. So I actually found him, and I thought he'd be perfect for the part of the story. And also I love the fact that he was actually in the community itself. And this was a great assignment. One of my first reportage assignment, where I actually went and photographed an event without staging it or bringing my own models. This, oops, sorry guys. Did I go back? There we go. Oh my God, I'm all, forgive me. There we go, okay. That's my photo. And that photo was taken in the 90s, and it was an outdoor strip club. And at first I should back up. Detour magazine, Rose Cephalou, the photo editor, called me to take on this assignment to go shoot this exotic World Strip Club out in Victorville, California, and it was incredible. Did you ever go?
It's quite a place.
I mean, exactly, like in the of all places, an outdoor strip club, and it was really interesting people, as you could see. It was your very unconventional type, strippers, and all ages, and different shapes and sizes, which I love. It was so beautiful, and most of the spectators, as you can see, were men that lived in. I think there was like a senior community around the area. But yeah, so, and also alongside that is the book a friend of mine turned me on to after he's seeing my assignment this on Exotic World. I didn't know anything about Susan Meiselas, and that book is incredible, The Carnival Strippers. Here she is doing this in 1975 in New England, in probably I think it looks like an outdoor event as well. Most of the time you think of strip clubs are indoors, but yeah, so this, I get a lot of my inspiration from looking at photo books, and, I studied a lot of great, amazing photographers, so, and this kind of seeps into my personal work too, so. Thank you.
We have 2 minutes. Well, thank you so much, Melody. Now, we don't have a lot of time because otherwise it's time taken away from the reception, and the reception is also on a timer. But thank you so much for all these fantastic presentations and interwoven stories. And I want to ask both of you, very short answer is how important is Los Angeles for your photographic practice?
Well, I'm somebody who really loves to think about places. And so being in Los Angeles, I can't help but keep thinking about LA, and it's played prominently in my work. I've moved from when I graduated from Cal Arts in 1988. I first lived downtown, then I lived in MacArthur Park, then I lived in Silver Lake, and then I lived in West Adams, and now I'm back in Lincoln Heights. Kind of popped around, and now I'm about ready to move to Hollywood. And so, LA it was interesting because LA, everybody assumed that I would move back to San Francisco after getting out of grad school because I was so involved in the 80s community all throughout San Francisco, including documenting San Francisco. And everybody assumed that, the North hates the South, so they say, that I would come back home. And they were like, well, you're going to come back home. But LA is actually too interesting, and it just always constantly gives me information that I want to be thinking about. Yeah.
I've found some really great projects in LA, like this Exotic World, as well as the beautiful book that I was able to publish, Compton, Writing Through Compton. So LA has a lot of great, subculture, which I love, documenting. But I also like places as well. I love traveling all over, everywhere is my canvas, as I like to say.
And Russet, what do you think is different about doing the reading room on the West Coast compared to the East Coast reading rooms that you have seen at New York Public Library, the Boston Athenaeum, and even in the Netherlands and in Madrid? How?
Each reading room is radically different. I mean, there are 258 books that are documented in what they saw, but when we partner with each institution, we pull from what's in their holdings that cross-references with the publication. And so oftentimes it's books that are on off-site storage or haven't been pulled out for a while, people have forgotten about. And also each institution has different ways of approaching it. For us, being able to touch the book, being able to take a book, go sit down in a chair, being able to look at Catherine's and Melody's book just calmly, get the sense of their narrative, get the sense of who they are from a book, I think is very different than looking at a print. Books have you touch the paper, they're tactile, they have a smell, and it's an intimate experience. But I also like seeing, like Olga and I were in the reading room earlier today, there are like clusters of people who sit together and like point things out in the pages and kind of go through them together. So what's really, that's the universal. But what is different is that it is a rejiggering each time. And also, curator will come in and say, hey, let's have a contemporary response, and it happens so beautifully and organically, and it really just expands the whole dialogue about where women, how they contribute, because women have always contributed. It's just, it hasn't been documented. That's the sad part.
So I have a question for you. Do you think that there's room in this world for potentially a library that is dedicated to women photographers and books? Is this anything?
Yes.
Is this possibly anything that you and your
My colleague?
Yeah, colleague are thinking about? Because, these archives and these places and the materiality and everything in relationship to what a book does, and that it is this intimate experience. How about, like, there has to be room somewhere for a library that you could end up creating? Is this any desires of yours?
Yeah, it is, obviously. I mean, we have done, when we did the reading rooms, and we didn't actually go out and buy the books for our research purposes, but during COVID we had to buy a lot of books because libraries were closed. And as I think you said, you can buy them for like $15 on, ABE Books or eBay, and because they're not in the canon, and the whole idea is to put them back in the canon. But yes, we would love to do a library, but in the past we donated the books at the end of a touring reading room because the artist donated them to us, and we're not going to make money off of, if an artist donates a book to us, we put it into an institution where it remains in the public sphere. But yeah, someone's got to underwrite it though. That's always the case, right? Someone's got to pull out the checkbook and underwrite that project, but I think, it should be done. Oh, yeah, please.
Right.
So you are sure that there is a future for photo books in the era of AI and social media and the digital media? Photo book is here to stay, you think?
I think so. Photo books, I feel, to me, who wants to stare at a phone, or a monitor all day to look at a beautiful piece of, art or, a photograph? So I think books are here to stay. I think they'll, at least probably past my lifetime.
Somebody's got to keep the paper mills going.
Right. Yeah.
No, photo books are completely here to stay. It would be nice if more women were able to have an opportunity to make a book. I would really like that to happen. I think it is happening now through your statistics, which is really great to see. Thank you for being the guerrilla girl of photo books. So there's just nothing like being able to figure out your end pages, to be able to figure out your paper, to figure out the sequencing, that photography is automatically something that is about storytelling and creating these sequences. And the way that you can go through something over and over again and learn something different. I must have taught Ballad of Sexual Dependency for over 30 years. But even when I thumb through it, or I bring up, Larry Clark's Teenage Lust in relationship to Nan Golden, or how you create a history through photo books for your students in relationship to ideas of visibility and representation. And I certainly don't think that any of the social media at this point can do the same thing. So.
And I taught as well for 20 years in New York at the School of Visual Arts, and my students want to make books. They want something. They were born digital natives, and they're MFA students. They want to make books. So I think it's here to stay. And you guys have the LA Art Book Fair coming up in a few weeks. So there you're going to see a lot of young photo book makers, zine makers, and you're going to see a lot of women. There are a lot of women involved in this. And you also have to kind of, if you're looking historically, one of the big things that Olga and I had to do was step outside of the idea that a book was done by a trade publisher distributed through traditional networks, because oftentimes women were shut out of those avenues for publishing their books. So they're self-published, they're pamphlets, they're zines, they're unique albums. And this is book. Women were the original scrapbook makers. So we've got a long history here.
Thank you. I think this is a wonderful ending for our panel, and I don't know if there is one question maybe from the public, or no. Okay.
Can I ask you a question? Sure. Because, somebody else can raise their hand out there. We'll go to you. But my question is one of the things that I always wonder within a book and making a book is, obviously you work with a sequence, you work with it. How do you know when a body of work is done for yourself? How did you know that after 4 years that it was time for the book and the body of work got completed? I think that, Elizabeth Taylor, obviously, was a time frame because she passed away. But when do you decide within your own archive and your material that you've got the book there?
Oh, that's a good question. I know, because I could still keep photographing this particular club, the Compton Junior. Now it's actually called the Compton Junior Equestrians, because Maisha has since retired, so I have to make that little detail. But I finally just, after a while, I felt like she was actually about to retire, Maisha, the founder of the club, and we wanted to kind of wrap things up for her and kind of finish. I wanted to finish up so she can have something that she could see for all the work that she's done. But so after 4 years, I tend, and how I was working with the book, I was making sure that all the stories, and were, when you're telling a story about a particular subject or club, like the Compton Junior Posse, they were, I wanted to make sure I got everybody's voices in there, and wanted to, just show the growth, I guess I should say, like starting from the beginning to, to see where their progression was. And by the way, I wanted to point out Zoe, who was who might be here in the audience, I'm not sure, but giving a shout out. Zoe is now, I met, her back in 2015, and she was, learning to ride, and an amazing student. She is now at college at UCLA on the equestrian team, and doing quite well. But I don't know if I answered your question there, Kathy. So.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Can I jump
Yes.
off of that? Photo book making is collaborative. So, I mean, you're working with a designer, you're working with publishers. Can you guys talk a little bit about collaboration? Because it's not a solo act.
No, it's not a solo act. And it's interesting because, as I said, Lorraine Wild designed most of my books. It started, and then also I want to, I think there's a really interesting differentiation as well that we didn't talk about on this panel, and that is a museum catalog versus a monograph, and how those operate differently in relationship to an exhibition, and maybe not the same kind of sequencing and things like that that would happen within a photo book. That you're in control of. But I'm a very kind of triple Aries type of person where I'm a little bit controlling, so I don't know if I'm a whole lot of fun to work with. But the Fiden catalog, which was came out just basically 2020, was the first really large monograph that wasn't attached to a museum exhibition such as the Guggenheim catalog. And I let go of that. And I was ready to let go of my controlling triple Aries self. And it was really awesome because they came up with people, politic, and place. We ended up taking all the different bodies of work that I've always held very tight together in terms of its identity, because it's like, no, that's American cities, or whatever. And it all got mixed up together, and it allowed me an avenue to see my work in a different way. And so I really appreciate a great editor in that kind of collaboration, because if you can give up control, then you can actually learn a lot of things about your own work. And so I appreciate those kinds of lessons a lot.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because, because of the wonderful subject matter I had, I was able to through a connection, like Amelia, my partner, and I, who did the text, did the interviews, we I got introduced through to Kat Jimenez, who was organizing have you heard of MOPLA? MOPLA was, I guess, so I was part of MOPLA back in 2018. And through MOPLA, the month of photography in Los Angeles, through my curator, Audrey Landreth, who I think might be in the audience, who was amazing, who helped me with that. Audrey actually connected me to Kat, and I was going to say why that came up. Kat introduced me to a publisher. It was Kat shared my photos to a publisher, and I think the publisher, Michelle Dunmarch from Minor Matters, might be in the house. And Michelle saw the pictures and really took to the photos, so I was going to say, Kathy, I was fortunate enough, based on the subject matter, I was able to get a book published through, just purely on the subject matter. And then she had an interesting way of how she would publish books, because it was a small publication, but she would, invite public to participate in publishing books through their advanced purchases. So basically, as you buy books in advance, and become part of the process, and they typically would have a deadline of 3 months if you sell 500 copies, and then that also determines if the book would do well or not. But that was a really interesting way to do it. It was a great collaboration with Michelle. I actually initially wanted to just put images in the book and not even have words. I was all about just photos. I figured that the photos were strong enough by itself without it, but I then realized the importance of this story, this club, about these amazing kids and their voices, and hearing their voices and knowing, and just asking them questions about what the program meant to them and how the horses meant to them. So I realized through talking with the publisher and my writing partner, we said it would be, I sort of backed away and said, yes, that was very important to do it that way. And I'm glad I ended up making that decision. And so text and pictures can be really great depending on what you're working on. Yeah.
Do we want to talk a little bit about how you hope to have an impact on future generations with your work and your photography?
Well, yeah, I taught for 32 years, so that was a lot of future generation. It was really great, and I'm retired, and I'm still doing workshops. I went last fall to Yale to do the final crits at Yale. I don't think I think that even though I've decided that now I'm in my, mid-60s, that I'm ready to really just be an artist for the first time in my life. I've always had a day job. And then I was a mom. And so being a mom and a professor and an artist was a lot. And so, yeah, the future generations, I still want to be out there and working with them. But I actually feel that 32 years was an amazing gift for me. And I'm ready to just think about my last third act and just keep making as much work as I can.
Yeah, and you, Melodie, already talked about this wonderful story, putting it up there, and now your Zoe ending up at UCLA after the Posse initiative is really wonderful. Do you have other projects you are hoping to publish?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I do. And this experience, just publishing the Writing Through Compton, really made me think about my body of work, all of my body of work over the years, and I hope someday to put together just a retrospective of my work. And I also have some other projects that, I love storytelling, especially storytelling through photos. So now that I have this experience working with a great, having a good experience collaborating with the publisher, I feel more confident now in going out and doing research to connect, or even self-publish if I have to, because if I can't find a publisher, I'm still going to figure out a way, if that means putting it out there myself, So.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I think we covered a lot. Huh? We are good. And now it's time to go celebrate together. Maybe I hope you also go in the reading room. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.